Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I have listened with, as usual, when I listen to everyone speaking in this August Assembly, to a lot of interesting remarks that members of Parliament have made on both sides of the House. I have also, same as you, same as the population listening to us, listened to those very complicated things and those terms, as the Honourable Minister of Finance likes to say, une question technique. So, all those issues about GDP, deficit, and whatnot. I see that on the other side and on this side, accountants, on the contrary, are so used to those terminologies that they feel very comfortable. But the people outside, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, would like us to be able to explain to them what's in there for them in this budget. The government, we expected the government, when dealing with a pandemic of this magnitude, as the Prime Minister of Singapore stated in a recent declaration, a pandemic that is being clearly converted gradually by la force des choses into, is becoming endemic. Those are his words. That we will have to adjust, not necessarily about humans adjusting to the way we live, social distancing, being masked, and whatnot. But every single element of our lives needs readjustment. And when I mean every single element, I mean even our approach to economics, our approach to policy making, our approach to the good governance issues, our approach to running the affairs of the country, and even the expectations of the inhabitants of the Republic of Mauritius. We have to adapt to it as they also have to adapt to certain new realities. That is the truth of the things. But in order for us to adapt, and in order for us to be able to tell inhabitants that they also need to adapt, we have to start somewhere, which is by being truthful about the reality of the situation. It would not help any government to try to play politics with budget at this time of our history. It does not in any way help any government to try to pretend that everything is okay and it's business as usual. And this is precisely what this government has done. This government has sugar-coated the truth. I do not want to use any other terminology that shows wrongdoing on the part of government or ill intent. Let me use the very diplomatic term. They have sugar-coated reality. And at the end of the sugar-coating, the sourness, the intention was for the sourness to disappear. The truth to disappear. The truth of the matter is the world at large is suffering. The truth of the matter is that like no country can pretend that we have managed to contain the effects of COVID-19. No one can pretend that we've managed, no country, no democracy, not even an autocracy, can pretend that we managed to contain les effets négatifs économiques du COVID-21. It would be a lie to say so. Mr. Speaker, sir, the role of a government, whatever they do today, will have an impact in the future. Whatever decision they take today will have an impact later on down the line. Everything they do will come back to bite them. Reality always catches up. The truth always catches up. I have noted with a lot of interest that this budget has been built upon assumptions. Whenever the Minister of Finance says, I'm expecting to have 650,000 tourists, that is an assumption. That is not a figure that he is guaranteed to have. No Minister of Finance can come and say, I am guaranteed to have 650,000 tourists a year. Impossible. That's impossible. On what does he base those figures? I don't know. That there was a need to reopen the economy is a fact. But there is no need to reopen the economy by sugarcoating the truth. It's based on the assumption that those 650,000 tourists will indeed come to Mauritius, that they will spend X amount of money, they will contribute to the economy. It is also built on the assumption that we will see 9% growth. And that assumption is also based on other assumptions. It's not for no reason at all that we find in columns of the budget that a lot of figures are simply estimates and revised estimates. That is the truth. It's also based on the assumption that we will not have a new wave of infections of COVID-19. It is based on the assumption that we will have a proper vaccination campaign. It is based on the assumption that we will reach herd immunity sooner than later. It is based on the assumption that there is no additional burden that will be placed on taxpayers' backs and shoulders because of mismanagement on the part of the government. Those are all assumptions. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Let me establish for you today how this Minister of Finance has managed with a lot of ability to ignore what was about to happen to him, showing that his assumptions clearly are frail assumptions. If we are to believe him, then we have to look at what he has done in order to see whether his track record shows that his assumptions are correct. First question, why did he not, in his assumptions, consider the possibility of losing the case at the Privy Council concerning Betamax? First assumption, first question. It was logical for any responsible Minister of Finance to have factored in that possibility. But he did not factor in that possibility. Let me go back to history. Back in 2015, and let me say here, je dédouane le ministre des Finances actuel parce qu'il ne peut pas être responsable de quelque chose when he was not even in government in 2015. He was not. Whereas the actual Prime Minister was, whereas the actual Attorney General was, he was part of the same government, but I can see how he says, no, he tries to run away. Why does he try to run away from such a truth? And the way his finger tried to say, Mr. Speaker, no. Oh God, I love that. But then again, was it an astute use of the finger? That is something else. What about Honorable Dahlia? Wasn't he not part and parcel of this whole issue? Let us not forget about those amazing speeches that he pronounced. Let us not forget, wasn't Honorable Kalichern part of the play? I see his silence is quite amazing, interesting, hiding away behind his mask. I thank him for the social distancing, but I invite him not to social distance himself from the responsibility that he holds. Do not take distance from that. There is what we call collective responsibility. If certain people, I cannot also blame the Deputy Prime Minister, because in those days he did not form part of the government. He was, on the contrary, outside, criticizing what the actual government was doing. Silence. I love that. Let's look at this honorable member who reminds me of what Honorable Ariram does. He speaks faster than he thinks. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. And to even call him Lucky Liu could be a compliment. To speak faster than you think is dangerous. I cannot blame Honorable Ramano, because he formed part of this, the good guys, may I call it. He was on this side, criticizing what the other people were doing, because he was dead against what was done before Betamax. He was dead against the rash acts and doings of the government of the day. Today he sits there and he keeps quiet. But I guess I am impressed by his staunch morals. Once upon a time he was against, now he keeps quiet. He cannot say he's for. Good. I cannot blame Honorable Jagat Pal. You know why I can't? Because he's got enough on his plate. He's got enough on his plate to be blamed for. So why should I add to his burden? Let's look at page 25 of this judgment. Let me remind you that this government, headed by Sir Jugnauth, together with the actual Prime Minister, Pravin Kumar Jugnauth, the same people who were in charge of the kitchen then still responsible. Maybe they have gone up in the hierarchy as far as kitchen hierarchy is concerned, but they're still there. Those people in 2015 decided to come to TV, have a press conference, and shoot down a contract between STC and Betamax. They called it unlawful. They called it illegal. They accused the Labour Party of having stolen money. This provoked the arrest of the leader of the Labour Party through provisional charges for supposedly having used his office for gratification. They went on and arrested then Honorable Betsu when he was minister. And they made politics about this. They tried to convince la population que le Parti travailliste avait fait quelque chose de mal. Que le Parti travailliste avait fait quelque chose d'illégal. And then, when they won their appeal at the Supreme Court, they made politics again, coming and going for press conferences and showing how the Labour Party was wrong, the leader of the Labour Party was dirty. But when you read the judgment here at page 25, let us see, is there anything illegal that was done? What does the Privy Council say? The Privy Council, I quote, says, it says it here. The board will nonetheless set out the reasons for its view that arbitrator was correct in the conclusion he reached, that the contract of affreightment was exempted from the Public Procurement Act and the Public Procurement Regulations. And I read, look at that. And there was therefore not illegal under those provisions. The Privy Council, the law lords say that whatever was done was therefore not illegal under those provisions. Whatever those ministers, whatever that government did, by destroying that contract for purely political reasons and nothing else, to satisfy the bloodthirsty politicians in order to have political supremacy, whereas they put on the back end of their interest the advancement of the country. Today the Privy Council comes and condemns that government decision by saying there was nothing illegal about it. Will we hear an apology on the part of those who form part of that government? Not. That's not enough. Let's go further. Page 40 of that judgment. And I ask the honorable ministers who look down, tell me and convince me that when you look down and do not hear, that you are not looking down and turn away in shame. It is shameful, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, to know that we can have a government in 2015 that could take political decisions that would have budgetary implications in 2021. Political vengeance, vendetta, to destroy a contract and call it unlawful. Today, c'est le taxpayer, le citoyen de l'île Maurice, chaque enfant qui n'est même pas né, chaque jeune, chaque moins jeune, chaque habitant de cette île Maurice aura à payer pour la politique dégoûtante et revancharde, dangereuse d'un gouvernement de 2015 qui est nul autre, ce gouvernement, une émanation du même gouvernement ou une extension of the dirt of 2015. When you read page 40 of that judgment, I quote, as the board is of the view that the Supreme Court was not entitled to review the finding in the award on illegality, and the contract of affreightment was not in any event illegal, not in any event illegal, not in any event illegal. it is neither necessary nor helpful to address the third issue in the appeal. Very simple English. In other words, whatever this government, headed by Sir Jugnauth, Minister Lakshmana Raidu, Minister Ravi Regadu, Minister Pravin Jugnauth, Minister, all of them who were there, of members, part of the executive, they were all wrong. And when they told the people of this country that the Betamax issue was unlawful, they were not speaking the truth, because the truth is in fact and finally in the judgment of the law lords of the Privy Council delivered today, le 14 juin 2021, and it is at the same time a finger of blame towards this old government. In Creole, we say mon fait autres compte là. Why is it that the taxpayers, pourquoi est-ce que c'est les taxpayers qui doivent payer pour la négligence criminelle de ce gouvernement de 2015? Pourquoi? Isn't this faute-lourde, négligence inacceptable de la part des ministres du gouvernement de 2015? Et regardez-moi, monsieur le vice-président, comment les ministres qui formaient partie de ce gouvernement n'ont même pas l'audace ou le courage de faire face à la réalité. J'aimerais bien que chacun d'entre eux, au moment de faire leur discours ici, ils viennent présenter leurs excuses à la population. It would take 53 years for every single minister, every member of government, who would accept to be honorable enough to be responsible for that wrongful act, de payer pendant 53 ans leur salaire de ministre, mensuellement, pour arriver à un chiffre de 4,5 milliards. 53 years. Mais au lieu de cela, ils vont simplement se servir de mon bon ami, le ministre des Finances, et se servir de son ingéniosité et de sa capacité de jouer avec les chiffres, capacité que je n'ai pas, parce qu'il manipule et maîtrise avec une certaine dextérité les techniques économiques que je ne veux pas pouvoir maîtriser, parce que it's beyond my capacity, and I do not want, even if I had that capacity, I would not go his way, and I'll get to the second stage of my intervention to explain why. They will use him in order to come and take the blame, just like they used Honorable Jagat Pal to come and change a decision for a fact-finding committee. But anyway, then again, if you have dignity, you resign. If you don't, you don't resign. Il faut tout pour faire un monde. So, let's look at them. And I'm happy Honorable Kalichern is here, who's a good friend, who's known in the public for someone who does not hesitate to have proper, constructive debates on issues. And I'd like to underline that. And I'm not saying that to embarrass him, even though if you may feel embarrassed, that was not my intention. Because very often people don't like it that on the other side we can have debates with people on this side, specifically me. But anyway, I guess they're afraid. Now, let's look at the document, because the minister has another assumption, Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance says that there are only 52,200 unemployed in Mauritius and not more than 9%. Okay. I put it to him, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, that his contention is fraught with irregularity and inexactitude. That is also me trying to be diplomatic. Last year I would have used another term, but I think I have to be diplomatic. When you're fraught with irregularity and inexactitude, you know exactly what it means. But when you do it en connaissance de cause, that is the danger. Let's look at the first document. The document Labour Force Employment and Unemployment Year 2020. And this is from the statistics of Mauritius, and I'm going to use that document to prove today that what this government, headed by Sir Jugnauth's heir, the actual Prime Minister, said is not true. And I'll say how. I put it to him that today we have almost 100,000 people who are unemployed. 100,000 people unemployed. On a à peu près 100 000 chômeurs à l'île Maurice, et je vais le prouver en utilisant ce document, qui est le document produit par Statistics Mauritius du ministère des Finances. Look at the first document on there. The first document, which are the key figures. And it refers here to the figures of 2020, labor force of which employment. And it says here clearly that there has been minus 33,400. Minus 33,400 people. The net change in employment level here, and it shows it's equal to employment creation minus employment losses. So are there or are there not figures produced by this government to show that there are employment losses? Yes, minus 33,400. That's in 2020. Those are official figures. This is clearly, Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, sir, an underestimation, and I'll say why. Because those figures concern January, do not concern January to June 2021. Those are figures that were produced by government for last year in 2020. But the figures of this year, interestingly enough, are not produced. So it is logical to conclude that more destruction of jobs have occurred, more than 33,400, if you include the 6 months of 2021. Now, with regards to the other issue, employment to population ratio, there is another issue there. What is employment to population ratio? I'm reading here a document from the ILO, and it says here, a high ratio means that a large proportion of a country's population is employed, whereas a low ratio means that a large share of the population is not involved directly in market-related activities because they are either unemployed or more likely out of the labor force altogether. That is the definition that is given. And then let's look at another part of that document, and I read, the employment to population ratio provides information on the ability of an economy to create employment. For many countries, the indicator is often more insightful than the unemployment rate. Why do I say we have to look at this figure first? Because the unemployment figure is easy to manipulate. And I say it is being manipulated by this government in order to hide the truth and to sugarcoat the reality. As it stands here, using this document from the ILO, I go to the other, which is employment to population ratio, that shows a massive drop of minus 3.6. There has never been, in the past 20 years, a drop of that magnitude. A drop of that magnitude clearly indicates, according to the document of experts of the ILO, and not politicians here who have an interest of their own to serve and who manipulate figures, it says here that if you have, it shows the ability of an economy to create employment. So here, this is the truth. The Mauritius is unable to create an employment. C, let's go to another issue now. Employment to population ratio. It shows here, as I've said, the massive drop that has never occurred ever in the last 20 years. You look at the statistics of the last 20 years, it has always been in the region of 0.4, 0.5. For the first time ever, it's dropped by minus 3.6. That shows that this country is unable to have jobs for our citizens. That's the truth. So you cannot manipulate that figure. Thank God. Next issue, which I think is very important to talk about and to use their own figures, Mr. Speaker, it's the following thing. The unemployment figure of 52,200, it's important to say that also that excludes 2021 figures. The Honourable Minister of Finance should walk and go to the redundancy board once in a while. The Minister of Finance should maybe go, instead of his own office and meeting big corporates, go and see how les travailleurs de ce pays sont en train de perdre leur emploi in masses. How fathers and mothers, les parents, les jeunes, les moins jeunes, les artisans, tous ceux de ce pays sont en train de perdre leur emploi et c'est une réalité. And when you add their own figure in that very document of statistics, Mauritius, outside labor force, of which potential labor force, 42,000, an increase by 39,600. And what is exactly potential labor force? It shows here that those were people who are not in employment. Why does the Minister of Labor and the Minister of Finance together agree with something that is so totally inexact and hiding the truth? Can you imagine a record increase of 39,600 for people who are outside labor force, of which potential labor force, and it is explained as potential labor refers to persons not in employment and who were not actively looking but were available for work. En d'autres mots, ils étaient sans emploi. And when you add the 52,200 to 42,000, it's 94,200 unemployed people in Mauritius today. That is the reality the Honourable Minister of Finance cannot run away from. And the truth of the matter is, those are figures of last year. January, February, March, April, May, June, those are not even computed in there. In other words, and I say it without hesitation, we have more than 100,000 people unemployed today in this country. Unemployment of the youth, hidden, barely touched by the minister, ignored by the orators of government. Why do the orators of government refuse to talk about youth unemployment? A record increase, plus 3.3%. From 2019, 22.8 to 2020, 26.1. In other words, as we speak today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, plus que 1 in 4 youth, 1 in 4 youth, more than 1 in 4 youth unemployed in Mauritius today. More than 1 in 4 youth unemployed today. The situation is even more catastrophic for women in employment. Women in employment, record-breaking figures. You can try to sugarcoat as much as you want, but it does not help policy making if you do not have the courage to speak the truth. It does not help medium-term and long-term planning. It cannot help us to get out du gouffre où on est aujourd'hui si on ne dit pas la vérité à la population. N'oublions pas quelque chose, Monsieur le Vice-président. Tout ce que je vous dis en ce qui concerne les chiffres du chômage, vertigineux. Vertigineux. Et aujourd'hui, le gouvernement ne peut pas le nier. We are doing this, and at the prescribed period, le ministre du Travail doit le savoir. Le prescribed period by regulations is coming at an end on the 30th of June 2021. So all the stops that were put in to stop employers from sacking people for economic reasons will no longer exist after the 30th of June 2021. And has the Minister of Finance said they will implement a new regulation in order that those people cannot be sacked unless they go and take financial assistance? No. Why is it not referred to? Why he did not say that we will have an extension of that? But on the contrary, what he says is that only the wage assistance and self-employed assistance scheme in the tourism-related companies will be extended jusqu'au septembre 2021. What about all the rest? I say it clearly, with avoiding the truth, with sugarcoating, with not telling the people and not having the courage to tell the people that la vérité. As from the end of June 2021, the figure of more than 100,000 chômeurs va augmenter de façon vertigineuse, and we're going to hit the 150,000 chômeurs in no time, because this government did not have the courage to face la vérité en face. But instead, as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition said, they chose to sugarcoat in order to prepare a re-election in 2024. That's all their interest. It is not the interest of the people. They will not even sacrifice power for the benefit of the country. They will concentrate on the necessity to retain power, even if it is au détriment de la République. So, when I hear those speeches of the young members of parliament from the other side, posterity will run after you one day. History, people will run after you one day and tell you, why is it that you did not have the courage to tell us the truth? Something else I'd like to also say. Why is it that the figures of the Statistics Mauritius do not refer to underemployment anymore? The ILO says that you need to include underemployment. I'm referring today to the document of the Mauritius Commercial Bank Focus. In 2018, we had labor underutilization of 168,000. Underutilization of 168,000. And how do we get to that figure? And I think that the Honorable Minister of Finance honestly will be interested to know that. Underemployed in 2018, 124,900, plus 40,100 unemployed, plus potential labor force, 3,800, is equals to labor underutilization de 168 800 en 2018. On est en 2021. Le underemployment aujourd'hui, wrongful use of resources, in other words, you cannot create employment for those who are qualified. They have to accept any employment. Underemployment. Not an efficient use of your resource. Mismatch, not addressed by the Minister of Labour ever since 2015. So many years have passed. Today, on a un underemployment de beaucoup plus de 150 000 citoyens. On a un unemployment, d'après vos chiffres, de 51 200, de 52 200. On a un potential labor force de 42 000. En d'autres mots, quand on ajoute tout cela, on est à 244 200 of labor underutilization. Peut-être c'est trop technique, Monsieur le ministre des Finances. Mais cette technicité, quand on évite de le regarder en face, it is committing suicide, Honorable Mr. Speaker, sir. When you do not face the reality, you're killing the country. Yes, you may fool 1, 2, 3, 10. You may get re-elected, but you will be remembered, sir, as the one who did not look at reality and have the courage to take decisions. Why has the Minister of Commerce forgotten about something? On a le toupet de venir nous dire, Monsieur le Vice-président, que le prix des commodités, inflation is under control. Inflation is under control. On le va dire, tous ceux qui me regardent aujourd'hui, quand on va faire nos achats, on le sait que les articles, food commodities, on average, an increase of 20 to 25%. That is a fact in our bill. When we look at it at the end of the month, it has increased by 20 à 25%, ou même 30%. It's a fact. From milk to meat to chicken, dairy products, it's all increased. And we're going to have increase of fuel again, 2 rupees on each liter to pay for vaccination. And the surplus is going to keep. And it's going to have, en d'autres mots, he didn't tell us about that. And maybe because of Betamax, il faut mettre encore 2 roupies ou 3 roupies là pour pouvoir payer les erreurs du passé de ce gouvernement. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, we have people outside of this assembly who can't afford to eat properly, who can't afford to eat as they used to in the past. Their children have to sacrifice themselves because of la cherté de la vie. That is the reality. As I said, the bread and butter things, as my honorable friend, Honorable Boulel, always says, the bread and butter things in politics, nothing else. Emploi, coût de la vie. Today, when the Honorable Minister of Finance sends his officers at the end of the month to supermarkets to have a survey, at the time when supermarkets are having promotions, and you're going to have a manipulated inflation figure. Very good. Maybe that will satisfy his ego. Maybe that will satisfy the ego of the Prime Minister, Pravin Kumar Jugnauth. Maybe that will satisfy those who are behind the curtains. But the reality is, et même aux jeunes membres de l'Assemblée nationale, même s'ils sont de l'autre côté de la Chambre, je ne mens pas quand je dis que la vie, la cherté de la vie, is a serious issue today. We cannot pretend that it's not. You have to face your constituents. Every one of you have to face your constituents. We have to face our constituents. And the common denominator is employment and a lack of ability on government to create productive industries. Nothing in the budget to create employment. You talk about pharmaceutical industry. You're talking about manufacturing vaccination in Mauritius. When will that see the day? 2 years, 3 years' time? With a tax holiday of 3% over 8 years? What will this bring to the country? Friends of government will have the contract. Then what? No transparency. MIC will put in money. Then we can't put questions in parliament. No transparency, no accountability. This is what you're telling us will create employment. So I say again to members of the other side, the young backbenchers, I am not taking away from them their right to love their party, their loyalty to their party. I salute you for that. But I ask you that you should show loyalty to the people first, not party politics. The people come first, not the party. The people out there, you will need to answer those questions. Why is it that no jobs are there? Why is it that decisions were taken to indebt each child, even the unborn, by almost 5 billion rupees, and the interest is going up every day? Why did you keep quiet and sit down and, in other words, participate to the crime? You will have to answer one day. Maybe not now, maybe in 5 years' time, maybe in 10 years' time. Your names will be written not in gold, not in gold. So, Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me say that I've reached, you see, I'm looking at Honorable Ariram here, and it reminds me that he also was sitting down next to the former Minister of Commerce, saying how happy he was that the Labour Party was wrong and government was right when he won their case at the Supreme Court. Press conference. I remember him. What's he going to do now? Have a press conference? Maaf kar dijiye humko. Humne galat baat bola. I was wrong. Forgive me. Yeah. And that is a very interesting remark. You see, if we have remarks of that nature, then our country has a bright future. You see, the bright ability of this person to contribute economically to the debate is amazing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. That is what gives me confidence. You see?
Order.
You see? So,
Order.
let me say something else and I will conclude on that. Let me conclude on that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. When I say that we need to put country first and party last, I'm very serious about that. When I say we need to put country first and party last, I'm very serious about that. Has anyone been found guilty of anything? Let's talk about the BAI case that you belong to. And when you sat in the Bank of Mauritius accepting all the wrongdoing. You wanted me to come after you, I'll come after you. You're also party of that. That's the problem. When you have people who do nothing else. Nothing else.
Order.
Hold his leash. Pull the leash that's around his neck.
Order. Order, Honorable.
Can I continue, please? Can I continue, please?
Honorable Nakshadi. Honorable Ashyavadan. That's the second time I'm calling your name. Don't put me anywhere. Hey, Honorable Mohammed. Honorable Mohammed. Honorable Padia. Honorable Mohammed. I'm here to regulate your conduct. Please let me. Thank you very much. Please continue.
I'm concluding.
Yeah, and address to me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
So I'll address you, sir, because, I mean, you understand the concept, and I know for a fact that you understand the concept that one has to put country first in moments of such difficulty of COVID-19.
No, don't go about like what I understand.
No, all right, fair enough. Fair enough.
It's a debate.
Let me just say, I hope we all understand that.
Yes. Okay.
When I look at figures in this budget, for me, I'm convinced about one thing. There is the need, as a lot of experts say, that audacious. Audacious, why? As I've started out, and I'll finish on that same note, there is the need for us politicians to be able to show that we cannot simply divide the public sector and the private sector in terms of treatment. We cannot give security of tenure to some and then make others suffer financially. We cannot basically have a two-tier citizens and discriminate amongst our people. What I ask government to do is to realize that yes, and we accept that we are living through difficult times. And I believe that just like I'm the father of 4 children, many of us have families living here. We want our country to do better. Full stop. I'm not bothered about the colors here, red, mauve, blue, or orange. This is not the point. The point is, in the years to come, I'm going to be 53. And I hope that one day, that my children will not have to pay the consequences of negligence on the part of those governing the country. I'm not saying this government, I mean any government. There needs to be more responsibility and accountability. Because what is the bad news today, let alone the budget? The bad news today is that the ease with which this government, I do not find them at all bothered by this bill that is being slapped on the people of this country for almost 5 billion rupees because of their negligence. This has to change. If we are to go for a law that calls for responsibility and accountability, and not ministers hiding behind their permanent secretaries or chief executives, and where ministers are made to be able to be sued and prosecuted for wrong actions of this nature. It has to happen. Because I'm not saying there are not going to be ministers who will do wrong again in the future. I hope it doesn't happen. But if it does, there needs to be a change in the law and a change in mentality in order to discourage such actions. So we were at crossroads. And I think that the Honourable Minister of Finance has not shown him courageous enough. Now, I do not blame him personally. I think that he is obviously got his marching orders. He has to ensure that elections are won, even if the country comes last. He must ensure that governments, they can stay in government, power, they can stick to it, hold on to it, not go. As long as the country suffers, we will pretend and give and try to sugarcoat it again and again and again. Let's not forget that excess sugar does make people vomit. And I'm about to vomit when I lived that budget. Thank you.